These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal, Television for Agricultural Business Decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, thanks for taking the time to join us on this week's edition of Market Journal. I'm Bryce Duskin. As we near the end of October, the harvest continues to roll on all across the region. We'll be checking in with a Nebraska producer here in just a few moments. Also on this week's broadcast, sometimes life takes an unexpected turn, and that's where the group Farm Rescue steps in. We'll share how that organization is helping producers get back on their feet in times of need. Plus, the dreaded tax season, it is just around the corner. We'll get some practical advice for cattle producers as the year ends. All those stories are coming up on the show, but first, let's head out and into the field for our weekly harvest update. This week, Steve White is standing by in south central Nebraska. Steve?
Thanks, Bryce. We're in the field this week. Bertrand, Scott Ford, you're both on the crop side and the livestock side, aren't you?
Yeah, Steve, we have Highline Ag here in Bertrand. We're the Pioneer Sales Rep here since 2006, and also have Cross Diamond Cattle Company, which is southeast of Bertrand. We have a registered Red Angus operation down there.
And you've been in the business a while, haven't you?
Yeah, we're truly blessed. Kim and I actually bought our first cattle together back in 1996, and we've been raising registered Red Angus, and we have an annual bull sale in December. So.
And raising a couple of kids here too.
Yep, we got two girls. One of them just got married. We had the wedding reception here in the seed shed here in August, so I got to have a son-in-law now. So, and then I got another daughter that's going to school at Bryan College of Nursing.
And here we are, we're talking about the harvest. Let's go back to planting. It was awful dry, and actually it was kind of reminiscent of a couple of years ago. There were some pretty significant fires in the area, and it kind of felt like it was setting up that same way.
It really was, Steve. It was extremely dry this spring, and truly blessed. We finally did get a little bit of moisture halfway through planting season. I'd say overall the crops came out decent. You get south of Bertrand, though, it was quite a bit drier than north. You get to the Platte River and a lot more rain up that direction. So kind of did impact yields on both sides of the equation.
And then some disease pressure.
Oh my gracious. You know, I was talking to one aerial applicator. He's never seen the disease pressure as much as it was this year with southern rust. We are having some tar spot move into the area, so that's very, very concerning, and we definitely got to be vigilant moving forward on some of those diseases.
Yield kind of variable then?
Extremely variable. What we're really seeing is, you know, obviously genetics are playing a huge role in that, but you know, if they were able to control the disease, the southern rust, obviously keep that plant alive longer to fill that kernel, seems like the yields are pretty decent. If unfortunately we had some of that disease pressure move in and we weren't able to control it, there's definitely some struggles out there. And then as you move south, we just simply didn't get the rain, and the dryland yields were definitely off for sure.
What about some of the hay and forage conditions then?
You know, I think, you know, from that standpoint, I think pretty good. We did get enough moisture to kind of have a pretty decent hay crop in most areas. Soybeans in this area was really the bright spot,
sure.
Though. My gracious, soybeans were really, really good, and obviously must have had a favorable August to kind of get some nice yields out of our soybean crop.
I assume soybeans are pretty well wrapped up. Corn are probably over the halfway point, would you say?
Oh yeah, I'd say we're over halfway. There's a lot of high moisture corn put up in this area.
Sure.
We're blessed with a lot of feed yards
right.
in Phelps County, so that helps out a lot. I'd say 65% done on corn crop, and yeah, soybeans are pretty well in the bin.
So all in all, how would you rate how this year has turned out?
I'd say, you know, obviously decent. Obviously, we're hoping for maybe a little bit of rally in the grain markets here. Talking to some of our friends and colleagues back in the eastern part of the Corn Belt, I'd say overall yields nationwide look like they're kind of tailing off a little bit. I hope maybe we can kind of get a little rally in these markets to kind of help us out.
I have a feeling some guys are going to maybe hold on to some grain and try to market that over the winter here.
Absolutely. I think if a person has some storage, I'm certainly hoping that we can see some rallies here that'll help us out. I think storage could really pay off for some of these guys.
And then on to next year.
Absolutely. It's we're already making some field plans for customers. We'll sit down after harvest and really go field to field and talk about what products will fit their operation the best. So we're already working on those. We're putting together test plot data and all the things to help these customers be successful moving into 2026.
Always good to hear from producers directly out in their field. Thanks for that story, Steve. Well, cattle producers have enjoyed, of course, a strong year with many seeing record high profits. That makes early proactive tax planning even more important this year than ever. Market Journal's Mike Straub sat down with Tina Barrett. She's the executive director of Nebraska Farm Business Incorporated to share some practical advice as we head into the tax season.
Early, proactive tax planning is one of the most valuable tools you have when running a business. Getting to your tax preparer sooner will allow you more time to make adjustments and decisions that are right for your operation.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to have, an impact, and we're going to expect taxable incomes to be higher. So the earlier that they can get into their tax preparers to really look at that and start to make a plan for how they're going to handle that income, will really benefit them a lot. You can really make good decisions instead of just rash decisions at the end of the year. If you don't go in for your tax planning appointment until the middle of December, and then you've got 2 weeks over Christmas to, make whatever decisions you're going to make. If you can go in now, and it gives you some time to think about it and really make sure that the decisions that you're making are best for your operation and not just for this year's tax bill, that's really going to help them out a lot. So, I mean, it might be, maybe you don't need to spend as much on equipment as you thought you did, or maybe you do want to recognize a little bit more tax, but having time to think about that is really important. First thing is good records up to date. So, making sure that everything has been, however you keep your accounting records, that everything's entered, it's reconciled to the bank, that you've accounted for all your loan payments, all of those kinds of things. And then also a listing of income and expenses you expect to have before the end of the year. So it's really important to know if you're going to sell a calf crop in December, or if that's going to wait till next year, if you're going to be buying any replacements, anything like that. So all of those expected income and expenses are also very important.
With two tools provided by the One Big Beautiful Bill passed in July of 2025, most assets can be written off in the year they are acquired. Be cautious, though, as this means you can run out of depreciation when you might need it most. Stretching deductions across multiple years often make more long-term sense, especially when you're financing the purchase.
We got this summer with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act unlimited depreciation. I mean, we've got a higher 179 and 100% bonus, and both are permanent, and so that's really going to provide a lot of flexibility so that producers who need to buy some new equipment can use that and get their tax bill in a good position. It's always also important to understand that that's also an easy way that maybe we could be overspending or not doing good things from a management standpoint. Just buying stuff, it solves that tax problem pretty quickly, but especially if you're financing those assets, you got to make payments over the next 5 to 7 years, and you've already used all the depreciation, so we won't have any tax benefit when that cash has to go out in the future. So you're really monitoring whether or not that's the right decision for you, and for your operation is important in a broader sense than just tax management. One of the things that's really easy to think about is just getting rid of that tax bill and spending whatever it takes to have zero or very small amount of tax. But that really doesn't help us with that profitability or the balance sheet part of your business. So it's going to get you where you want on the tax side of things, but it doesn't help improve that financial health. So the only way we can pay down debt is to pay taxes, and it seems like such a backward concept. But if you think about that, you have $50,000 of income on your Schedule F, that means there's $50,000 more of cash that came in than expenses went out in general. And if you spent $75,000 on living, then you've had to borrow money to do that, right? So the only way we can do that is get that taxable income higher than your family living and your income taxes and any principal payments that you're making, especially on land, because we can't have no deduction for that at all. So this might actually be a time to consider paying some tax and using some of that money to pay down debt, get yourself in a healthier financial position, because we know these times aren't forever, and at some point there'll be a correction of some kind. And so using the profitability today to get into a better financial position is good for the operation. Yeah, I think we could even look back a couple of years at the profitability that crop operations saw in 20 and 21 and 22. And again, there was a lot of that money spent on equipment, different things to pay down that debt, the tax bill. And then the crop prices fell, and there was a struggle, and continues to be a struggle to make cash flow meet, because we've got those obligations that we locked into when things were good, increased our family living to a point where now it's really hard to pull that back down. All of those kinds of things really impact the operation today. And so for cow-calf operations, again, it's definitely time to enjoy some of this profitability, but making decisions that are long-term and locking into things, assuming this kind of profitability is here to stay, can really be detrimental to the operation in the long term.
High-income years are opportunities to build lasting strength into your operation. By planning early, spending wisely, and using depreciation and prepay strategies with care, you can lower your tax bills without creating tomorrow's problem.
Now, if you'd like some more insights from Tina on this topic, you can find it in an article over on the website beefwatch.unl.edu. Up next, it's that time of the show where we do a deep dive into the markets. And joining the broadcast this week is Mike Zuzolo, President of Global Commodity Analytics. Mike, it's good to see you. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks for having me, Bryce.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about soybeans. A little bit of a premium built back into the market. I imagine a few different factors, but what would you say is the leading factor for that?
I think the leading factor is probably the idea that with 50% of the harvest probably in the bag at this point, and the U.S.-China meeting expected between the two presidents next week, the soybeans have erred on the side of wanting to take on some additional risk premium. I would also say, Bryce, probably part of this goes back to, especially this recent week, goes back to the fresh sanctions on Russian oil. Seems to have ignited the short covering in the WTI crude, and I think that's spilled over into the soybean oil. Last fourth leg of this stool maybe that's helped push these beans up to new monthly highs, get us up to some pretty significant resistance in the front end around 1040, is the idea that maybe we have, because of the spreads, maybe because of the situation with the cash basis in some locations, found a little bit better space issues in some parts of the Corn Belt. Clients in Illinois, for example, are calling me, telling me that spot beans are now steady with the futures at this point. A lot different than what's going on in the Dakotas. Still rough riding out there, but the Illinois areas, Mississippi River areas, starting to free up, it sounds like, a little bit more in terms of premiums coming back in. Be extra interesting given that we go into November delivery at the end of the month.
Interesting insight. Appreciate you sharing that, Mike. Of course, the story with beans here over the last several months has been the fact that China has not bought any vessels of beans, and that has certainly made for challenging prices and conditions, as you mentioned, in the Dakotas, areas that would typically have a lot of exports head out to the PNW. Has there been any developments that make you optimistic that there could be some sort of trade deal or negotiations made between America and China at this point?
Right now, no, Bryce. I can't say that I see a lot going on in the positive direction. In fact, Asian sources would suggest that we don't even know if there's a real meeting set up at this point. There was supposedly a conversation back in the middle of September that was going to allow the APEC meeting at the end of the month here to be kind of the off-road map or offshoot to getting the two presidents together. Asian coverage of that is suggesting that that's not even set up yet. So I think the big thing that I would be looking at, it's related to your question, is the idea that in this later part of the week's trade, as the beans rally, we're also seeing the gold come back and move back above 4,000 an ounce. And I think that's a really key element to kind of the gauge, the canary in the coal mine, as to the trade fears or less trade fears. And as gold goes higher and the dollar goes lower, the trade fears increase. So I think something's going to have to give. I'm encouraging clients and subscribers to watch not just this November 25, but the back end November 26 beans, because we are getting closer to that $11 handle at this stage of the game.
Well, so far we've talked soybeans. We've got gold in there as well. Mike, let's talk corn. We've been a little firmer in the corn market, I think, as you and I talking here on Thursday morning, higher the last 7 of 8 of these sessions on the futures market. What's been giving the legs to the corn market?
Legs has been demand, and I think also a little bit more rhetoric, anecdotal evidence around both sides of the Corn Belt that the yields, as we get into the second 50% of harvest, not really what they were expected, a little bit weaker, whether it's disease pressure or flash drought pressure. It seems to me, Bryce, that maybe the trade's picking up on that. It seems like the old crop, new crop spread is picking up on that as well, with D's 25 coming up better than the July 26. I would also offer the idea that we've got some very strong demand still, export demand and ethanol demand. Weekly numbers very strong, and the EIA is suggesting at this point that we're probably going to see, for a second year in a row, record ethanol exports. So that 425 level has been resistance. It continues to be resistance. I feel like the corn is justified to go higher based upon supply-demand fundamentals, but the wheat market continues to hold it back. Why? Because soft red wheat is now back to a feed grain when you look at the wheat-corn spread.
Let's go over to the livestock sector. It's been a frankly weird and wacky week for the cattle markets. We could spend a lot of time on this week's show diving into all that's happened. There's been tweets out from the president, some planning by several of the cabinet members of the Trump administration into revitalizing the cattle industry, as we're at record lows in terms of the herd. Right now, yesterday we went limit down based on a tweet and some other factors, I suppose, Mike. But as it stands here Thursday morning, we're not limit down. How do you size up the cattle market?
I would take a step back at this point between now and the holidays, Bryce, even before this recent news broke of buying into and importing Argentine beef and some of the new policy initiatives that came out midweek. I've been talking to clients and subscribers about the similarities to 2014 and how we made a high in October back in 2014, had a substantial correction, a correction big enough even if to keep the uptrend was probably worthy of stepping in and getting some hedges in place and covering yourself and getting some floor prices in place. This news from President Trump about bringing in Argentine beef really reminds me a lot of what we did in the policy when it came to those astronomical egg prices back around Easter of this year. And so I feel like the beef policy, the egg policy are pretty much one and the same at this point. So watching key support resistance levels and watching September lows, for instance, in feeder cattle especially. But I think, a 15-20% correction would take you down around 320 on feeder cattle. That's worthy, I think, of getting some paper hedges in place.
It's a good point you brought up with eggs. Remember that, what could happen here when it comes to beef prices. Mike, appreciate you joining us on this week's broadcast. Again, thanks for the time.
You bet. Thanks, Bryce.
Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics, our guest. Next week on the show, we'll be doing a deep dive into the cattle markets, let you know everything that has transpired that might be impacting both the live and feeder cattle markets. Well, a passion for raising crops and livestock often starts quite young, and that is the driving success for a lot of family farming operations. But passion alone, well, it's not enough. A strong business plan and solid financial foundation are just as important. You can learn more about the 5 common mistakes that might be holding your operation back in the latest issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It is time now to get a check of weather with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt. Eric, we continue through the harvest season here, knocking on the door of November. How are things looking out there as we turn to the week ahead?
Thanks, Bryce. Really weak rain chances overall, a pretty quiet week overall. I want to start, though, by talking about the Ag Tech Conference in Gothenburg at the Bayer Water Center. Monday, November 24th, 9 to 5 p.m. Go to thespur.org/agconverge to register. In terms of sensible weather, we'll have a lot of troughing here across the northwestern portion of the continent coming into the central U.S. as we head to the early portion of the week. They'll open up some rain chances, particularly for the eastern 2/3 of the state. Now, we're not looking at significant amounts of rain coming for any of us, I don't think. Best chance of picking up half inch of rain would be the very eastern side of the state, getting over into Iowa. But I do think most everybody east of Panhandle has a chance at least of picking up a 1/10 of an inch, maybe a 1/4 of an inch as you get closer to Highway 281. But I don't think we're looking at any significant amounts of rain coming for anybody. So nothing that's going to really set you back from the field work for too terribly long, I don't think. Temperatures are probably going to cool off a little bit after this cold front comes through. As a matter of fact, we're not going to be super warm ahead of it. Likely be actually pretty cloudy the first 3 days of the week, particularly the eastern 1/2 to 2/3 of the state. But certainly temperatures behind it look to be a little bit cooler, and I think we're going to have a chance of picking up some freezing temperatures across the entire state on Wednesday morning. So if you have not had your first freeze yet, you'll have another chance out of here early or middle portion of this next week. Looking to Halloween, again, pretty quiet weather through Halloween, and I think for trick-or-treat, other festivities, temperatures look to be mid-40s, about 50 degrees, pretty seasonal for this time of year. I think Saturday, well, another chance of another cold front coming through may bring slight chances of rain across the state, but again, nothing significant for precipitation coming for a little while. As we get to the early part of November, I think we're going to see ridging build back into the central to the western portion of the continent. That's certainly a warm and dry signal for us, and I think we may see some temperatures get back into the lower to mid-70s across a portion of the state as we head into the first week of November. CPC favors drier conditions in the 8 to 14-day outlook, and again, this seems like a pretty good bet to me. And temperatures also expect to be warm, so again, especially once we get into the first part of November, I think we are looking at temperatures probably being relatively mild and may stay that way for just a little bit. Outlook for November for temperatures, again, pretty warm, not showing as much signal for northeastern Nebraska. I feel fairly confident that most of the plains and Midwest will be relatively warm for a good portion of November. Certainly the first half of November seems to be looking pretty warm right now. CPC does show better chances of above average precipitation across the entire northern plains, a lot of the northern U.S. in general. I'm a little bit skeptical of this. I think there are some teleconnection signals that would suggest we may see that ridging be a little bit more prominent over the central portion of the continent. And if that's the case, not only are we going to be warm, we probably will be relatively dry, at least the first half of the month. At least that's the way it looks right now. But we did see some sub-freezing temperatures across the state, as I mentioned earlier, so we did see temperatures drop below freezing for the first time for a lot of us in central and parts of eastern Nebraska. And again, I think we'll have another chance of that middle of next week as well. Precipitation, very good precipitation here the last 60 days across a lot of the wheat belt, including portions of west central and southwestern Nebraska. Drier here across portions of central Nebraska, and definitely we've had some deficits over 2 inches here across portions of northeastern Nebraska. And we do actually did see some degradation of the drought monitor again up here this week. So we now have a lot of the northeastern core of the state in D1, which is moderate drought. Also saw some expansion of normal dryness across portions of central Nebraska. Soil temperatures right now across the state, mostly the 40s to mid-50s. And this is the temperature and precip roundup for the week ending October 18th, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
Thanks for that update, Eric. Certainly getting a little bit chillier out there, but that's to be expected this time of the year. Well, finally today, for some, the 2025 harvest has been a smooth one, but for others, even getting started has been a challenge. Illness, injury, or unexpected events can bring operations to a halt in a hurry. That's where the group Farm Rescue steps in, providing a helping hand to farm families in crisis. Bill Dodd had the chance to catch up with that organization at this year's Husker Harvest Days to learn more.
The mission of Farm Rescue is to help family farms and ranches bridge crisis so that they have an opportunity to continue viable operations. This program provides families a chance to continue their livelihood by providing the necessary equipment and manpower to get the job done at no cost to the producer.
So Farm Rescue is a nonprofit organization that helps farm and ranch families in crisis. So if there's an injury or an illness or a major natural disaster like a fire, tornado, something like that wipes out their equipment, and for whatever reason the family is not able to get their crop in or out or make their hay or haul hay, those kinds of things, we come in and do it for the family. So we serve in 8 states, so North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, and then Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Illinois. And so the idea is to help the family through a crisis, help them get through the other side, and make sure their crop is going in or out, or their livestock's being taken care of so they can focus on recovery, rebuilding, whatever it is they need to do during that time, and not have to worry about the crops and livestock.
It does take a lot of manpower to work through acres of land. However, with a network of hundreds of people across multiple states, a vast majority of all on-farm work done by Farm Rescue is the direct result of compassionate volunteers who have affectionately come to be known as the Angels in Blue.
But we have, I would say, probably somewhere around 500 volunteers from, I think, about 48 states. And they come and they absolutely do all the work. They run the planters, the combines, the haying equipment, the semis, whatever needs done. It's all our volunteer effort, and we call them our Angels in Blue. Without our volunteers, we simply couldn't do all this. We really appreciate them.
It's no secret that many ag producers are proud and private people who like to keep things close to their vests. With that in mind, Farm Rescue relies heavily on referrals from family members, friends, and neighbors who recognize the struggles some operators may face in a time of crisis.
They can absolutely, in fact, I would say a lot of our cases that we learn of come from a family member or one of the ag businesses the family does work with or for. Oftentimes people are shy about reaching out on their own, or they don't know we're here. So we appreciate you helping us tell our story. That's why we're here at Husker Harvest Days this week, is to get the word out. If they don't know about us, we can't help them. So we appreciate your help in helping us get the message out.
When it comes to funding a project of this magnitude, personal and corporate donations really make this operation capable of doing what it does. From being a volunteer or a monetary donor, there are several ways that you too can get involved with Farm Rescue.
So we rely on private donations, both from individuals and corporations. We're 100% funded that way. So we have a lot of companies that have been with us for a long time, both large and small, since we were founded in 2005. We started out in North Dakota and have spread to those 8 states that I mentioned earlier. We're very pleased with that growth so far. Since 2005, we've been able to help just over 1,000 families. In fact, this past summer, we helped our 1,000th family, so that was a milestone for us. We hope to help many thousands more in the coming years and hope to grow into more states as we get the resources.
Occasionally, injury or illness can lead to lean times or outright shutting down an operation. However, that doesn't need to be the case. Farm Rescue's track record indicates 3 years after receiving Farm Rescue assistance, more than 90% of the assisted families have been able to maintain operations ever since. If you or anybody you know could use some assistance on their agricultural operation, it may be time to see what Farm Rescue has to offer. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.
Now, if you or anyone you know is having a difficult time and in need of some on-farm assistance, you can visit the website farmrescue.org to learn about this volunteer service. Well, that's just about all the time we have for this week's show, but quickly I want to let you know if you missed one of our stories, we invite you to head on over to the website marketjournal.unl.edu. On next week's show, some 70,000 blue and gold corduroy jackets are headed to Indianapolis, Indiana for the annual National FFA Convention. We'll be there to cover that convention, and we'll have some of that content right here on the show. Hope to see you back here next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Tuskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.